In RA 7.3, we come to the conjunction vav. And the conjunction vav most commonly can be translated as and. The conjunction vav adds two things together that are like each other. Jack and Jill. These are two nouns. I could say I am happy and exuberant. There I'm joining two adjectives together. And I can join two clauses together. I could say something like I am happy and Martha is happy. There I've used the conjunction and to join two clauses, and those are two like things. So in Hebrew, the way to join things together is through the conjunction vav. And the conjunction vav is going to be very similar in some ways to the inseparable prepositions, and in other ways there'll be some differences. But if we can remember our inseparable prepositions, b, k, and l, then it'll help us to compare and to contrast. One other thing, the conjunction vav not only could be translated as and, but at other times we might render it as but or yet, and I'll talk about that toward the end of this section. Let's talk about the ways in which the conjunction vav is like the inseparable prepositions, b, k, and l. Number one, typically when you want to say and, you're going to prefix the vav conjunction with a vocal sheva to the word that you are joining to something else. So if I wanted to say and a horse is sus. If I want to say and a horse, I have to add the word and directly onto the front of the word as a prefix. And notice that my vowel pointing is a vocal sheva. The beginning of a word, shevas are always what? They are always vocal. So notice here that this is just like the prepositions k, b, and l. They are also attached or prefixed directly to the front of a word, and they come standard with a vocal sheva, just as the conjunction vav comes standard with a vocal sheva. So v, sus would be rendered and a horse. If I put these two words together, ish, a man, isha, a woman, but I want to say a man and a woman, I'm going to join them by a conjunction vav. And notice that I have the vocal sheva there, so I just put the vav in front, add the vocal sheva. So ish v isha, ish v isha, a man and a woman. So the conjunction vav never occurs as on its own as an individual word. It is always prefixed to the front of another word, whatever is being joined to something else. Now, there's another way in which the conjunction vav is like the inseparable prepositions. Let's take the word adama. If you look down here, adama is spelled with a compound sheva in the under the aleph. A compound sheva is a variety of vocal sheva, remember? Now, that's land and earth. Now, if I want to say and land, what do? Well, I got to add the vav. And what goes under the vav? Normally, a vocal sheva. Can I put a vocal sheva and a compound sheva together? As you know, Hebrew does not allow that. This is a Red Rider problem. It's a Red Rider problem of magnificent proportions. So, what do? The compound sheva is a very violent guy, and he takes his Red Rider BB gun and shoots out not just one eye, but both. And then the compound sheva takes the vowel element of the compound sheva, in this case the pathak, and replaces that vocal sheva with the pathak. And the compound sheva is brazen and stays right where he is and says, ha ha, I did it. So to say and land, it's v adama becomes va adama. Va adama. Let's take a look at Edom. You remember Edom. Edom has a compound sheva. This is the katef segol. And to say and Edom, I'm going to prefix the conjunction vav. It should be straight. And I would normally put a vocal sheva there. Can I put a vocal sheva next to a compound sheva? Absolutely not in Hebrew. This is a red writer problem. We're going to shoot out both eyes and replace that with the full short vowel of the compound sheva, which is a segol here. So it would be ve edom, ve edom. Okay? So in these ways, the conjunction vav is behaving just like the inseparable prepositions did when we prefixed them to the words with the compound shevas under them. If you look at B on my screen here, another way in which the conjunction vav can behave like the inseparable prepositions is with words like Yehudah, Yehudah. In this situation, I have a yod with a vocal sheva. If I want to say and Judah, I would add the vav and its vocal sheva. And situation here is two vocal shevas can't stay together. What would happen? Shoot out an I, it becomes a kirik, sheva becomes silent, and then the old Hebrew love story kicks in where the yod quiesces. Because now this is pronounced vihudah, this is just as well that the yod quiesces, and it's almost like it sounds like a kirik yod. So when that yod quiesces and it loses its consonantal value, it loses vowel pointing, the kirik and the yod's eyes reunite and say, hey, we were once an item together, let's reunite. And they become the kirik yod vowel. And so I get vihudah, vihudah. So that can happen as well. And we saw that with le Yehudah in our prior chapter. If you remember, le Yehudah becomes li Hudah. And it will be written like this. Li Hudah, to Judah, to Judah. So vihudah looks just like that, except with the vav instead of a lamed, bet, or kaf. So those are ways in which the conjunction vav is very much like the inseparable prepositions. Now on these next couple of points, these are ways in which the conjunction vav is not like the inseparable prepositions. So let's take a look at the first one. When I want to add the conjunction vav to a word that already begins with a vocal sheva, what would I do? Well, I should put a vav, and it comes standard with a vocal sheva, in front of the word that begins with a vocal sheva. And under normal circumstances, with the inseparable prepositions, what would we do? Well, it's a red writer problem. It's a red writer problem. I cannot put two vocal shevas together. Normally, you would think that you would just shoot out an I and let the sheva become silent. But this is where the conjunction vav is not like the inseparable prepositions. Here, we are going to completely get rid of the vowel pointing of the shevas, and instead we're going to turn v into the vowel, the historically long vowel shurik. So it'll be oo, and then the word. Okay? So let's take a look at an example here. Let's use the word Samuel, Shemuel. Shemuel begins with a vocal sheva. I want to say and Samuel, so I will add my conjunction vav with its vocal sheva. This vocal sheva can't occur next to this vocal sheva. I don't go red writer in the same way where I get the kirik and the silent sheva. With the conjunction vav, what do? V becomes oo, oo. So I'm going to see the shurik instead. Now, here's the question. How am I going to vocalize this sheva over here? Do I make it a silent sheva, or does it stay a vocal sheva? Well, if you look to the right, when you see that sheva, trying to figure out, is it vocal or silent? Look to the right. Is that vowel long or short? And the answer is long. Shurik is a historically long vowel, therefore the sheva is indeed vocal and it stays vocal. So this is u-shemuel, u-shemuel, u-shemuel. Now, where do I divide words that have a vocal sheva? Do I divide to the left or the right of the sheva? The answer is I divide to the right of a vocal sheva. And that's going to create one slight inconsistency from something that you learned way at the beginning of our class, and that is that every syllable not only has to have a vowel, but every vowel of a syllable has to have a consonant leading it in front. Do I have a consonant in front of that shurek? The answer is no. It is a vowel, but there's no consonant in front of it. This is the only exception to that rule. This is the only situation where I will be able to start a syllable or a word with a vowel. Everywhere else, I will need a consonant in front of my vowel. So it's u, shmu, el. Okay, so there's my syllable division. 1 vowel, 2 vowels, 3. Vocal shevas are divided to the right, never to the left. They piggyback on the next consonant with its vowel. So u, shmu, el. U, shmu, el. So there I get u. Now, the next situation that can happen when I'm dealing with adding the conjunction vav, and again, this is where we are different from the inseparable prepositions, is when I want to add a vav conjunction to any Hebrew word that begins with a bet, a mem, or a pei. If the word begins with a bet, mem, or pei, and I want to add the conjunction vav to it, I cannot do it. I have to switch the conjunction vav to a shurek, just like I did with the situation up here. So it becomes uba, uma, and ufa. Okay? Now, to help you remember, just remember the word bump. B-M-P. This is the bump rule. Anytime the Hebrew consonants for B-M-P, bump, bet, mem, or pei, begin the word, and I want to put a vav in front of it, the vav is always pronounced u, not v. So take a word like melech, king, king. I want to say and a king. How do I do that? Normally, I take the vav with its vocal sheba, but since mem is a bump letter, I can't say v melech. What do? I will change this to shurek, and it becomes u melech. U melech. So I get the shurek there. U melech. That's different from the inseparable prepositions, isn't it? So u melech, and a king. If you look down here, I've put the letters for bump here. You see the u before those. Keep in mind that these 3 consonants that form the bump consonants all share something in common, don't they? They are what are called bilabial consonants. What does bi mean? It means 2. Labials, lips. I use the 2 lips to pronounce the letter bet, b, b. Notice my 2 lips are coming together. The meme, m, m, 2 lips come together, and the pei, p, p. Okay? Now, some people say, well, or ask, why does the v become u before these letters? And the reason, I think, is fairly simple. Do you remember how I told you that in Hebrew, originally, the vav was pronounced as the sound w, w. So what's happening here? If I try to put a w sound with a vocal sheva in front of a b sound, think about what I'm doing. Look at your lips, or pay attention to what your lips do to make the w sound. Your lips start w, rounded, and then your mouth opens and your lips spread out. Okay, so your lips are moving apart from each other to pronounce the w sound, w. At the same time, to pronounce the bet, what do your lips have to do? They actually have to close, because a bilabial consonant is formed by closing the 2 lips together. So for these 2 sounds, w and then b, or m or p, I'm trying to simultaneously open my lips and close them. And that just doesn't work very well. So if you understand that the real pronunciation of the vav was w, this makes sense then. It would be a lot easier to make the w sound oo, because your lips are already rounded, and instead of taking them apart, you leave them in the same place, rounded, oo, and then you can pronounce just close them slightly to pronounce the b, m, and f. Ubayit, umayim, fe, and so forth. So that's probably why you get this change. Now here's the third way that the conjunction vav is not like the inseparable prepositions. The conjunction vav absolutely does not eat hay sandwiches. The inseparable prepositions love to eat the hay. So when we prefix them to the article hay, chomp, chomp, they are going to swallow the hay, but not the conjunction vav. Conjunction vav does not eat hay sandwiches. And there's a reason for this. It's very simple. Look at these consonants. Kaf, lamed, bet. These are fat letters. Why are they fat? Because they eat lots of hay. Look at how skinny the vav is. The vav is so skinny. Why? Because the vav does not eat any hay sandwiches. You want to fatten up your cattle? Give them lots of hay. But the conjunction vav won't eat the hay. That's why it's a skinny letter. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples here. So I want to just demonstrate again how the inseparable prepositions do swallow hay. I take the word melech, means king. Ha-melech is the king. And if I want to say to the king, I would put a lamed in front of ha-melech, but then the lamed sees the hay and says, chomp, chomp, you look yummy. And he swallows the hay. Hay is going to be eaten, and the lamed will slide over and take its place. The vocal sheva will drop out over here, and the lamed will adopt the article haste, pathak, and doubling dot. So I'm left with lamelech, like what we see below here. Lamelech, to the king. Now, over here on the right, if I want to say and the king, I take ha-melech for the king, and I add the conjunction vav. And which form of the conjunction vav should I see in front of the hay? Well, the vav comes standard with a vocal sheva, doesn't it? Is there a bump letter here? The answer is no. There's no bet, mem, or pay. Does ha-melech begin with a vocal sheva here? No. So there's no reason for this to go to shurik. So it will just be the vav with the vocal sheva. Now, does the vav swallow hay? The answer is no. So guess what? I'm done. This form is the way it's supposed to be. Ha-melech, and the king. Remember, when you're adding the conjunction vav, it does not go in between the article and the mem. It always goes on the outside. Ha goes directly onto the noun, and the v then goes onto the ha. So ha-melech, and the king. The last thing we'll say about how the conjunction vav is written is point number 4 in Ross on this section. And here, the vav with its vocal sheva can sometimes be written, so this little symbol means it can become a vav with a kametz, that is a long A here. Long A. Could be a vav with a kametz before an accented syllable. So take a look at the word mayim. Mayim is water. Okay? One way to write and water is to put the vav in front of mayim. And normally I'd put the vocal sheva there, but mem is a bump letter, and so it becomes u. So u mayim. That's one way to see and water. But notice that the mayim is accented right before the vav, isn't it? And so I could also see va mayim. And so I want you to notice here that this is an alternate way to see this spelled. Not v mayim, but va mayim. Accented syllable immediately following. This happens not only with the conjunction vav, but you will see it from time to time with some of the inseparable prepositions too. If the inseparable preposition is immediately followed by an accented syllable, then that vocal sheva could become a long A, a kametz. So vamayim, vamayim. Now, the different forms of the conjunction then are as follows. V, which is normal, okay. U, the shurik, which is when I have bump letters, or if the word begins with a vocal sheva. Va, if I have an accented syllable immediately after the v. Okay, so it becomes va. and then V if I have a yod with a vocal sheva at the beginning of the word, and I'm adding the vav there. The yod quiesced, and the Keurig yod appears as the historically long vowel. Okay, so those are all the forms of the conjunction vav, and. Now in 7.4, we have one final comment about the semantics of using the vav conjunction with sentences. Now, first of all, if vav is joining non-sentences, things that are at the lower level of the sentence or clause, like just joining nouns together or joining adjectives together or prepositional phrases, then I'm going to want to translate the vav as and. Jack and Jill went up the hill. I love my horse and buggy. Horse and buggy are joined together by vav, use and. My lipstick is red and purple. They're the adjectives. Red and purple are like things. They're not sentences. They're just little parts of the clause. They're the adjectives, and I'll join them with vav and translate it as and. Now, if, on the other hand, the vav is used to join sentences or clauses together, then there are several ways that I might translate this, okay? One way, and the most frequent way, is just to translate them with, translate the vav as and. So, I went to the store, and I bought some milk, okay? So, very simple, just translate it as and. Now, if, on the other hand, and I'm using this whole line to represent a clause, if I have one clause, and then a vav, and then another clause, and the second clause is contrastive to the first clause, then I probably don't want to translate the vav as and, but rather translate it as but. So if I say something like, you love peanut butter, clause 1, I love chocolate. I'm drawing a contrastive notion. I might want to translate that as but. You love peanut butter, but I love chocolate. So there, when the second clause is contrastive, you can translate it as but. Another way to translate the vav is in the sense of now, where that vav is introducing a clause that is more parenthetical. So if I was giving a story, Adam did this, and Adam did this, and Adam did this, and then I wanted to stop the narration and make an aside, I might start that clause with a vav, and in English I would translate it as now, as in, now the serpent was really crafty. That's an aside or a parenthetical remark, and I would translate that vav not as and, but really as now. So to summarize, the conjunction vav could be rendered and, but, or now, depending on the semantic relationship between the clauses that are being joined together by that vav. It really probably isn't the case that the vav itself has all these meanings. Rather, the vav is functioning as what I like to call a sentence boundary marker. That is to say, when vav functions at the level of the clause, when it's a sentence-level conjunction, it really serves to indicate a new clause is here, a clause boundary. In English, we use punctuation marks to do that. We capitalize the first letter of the sentence, of the word, the first letter of the first word of the sentence, and then we usually have a punctuation mark to indicate the close of the sentence. These function together as sentence boundary markers. And then we have another capitalized word followed by a period. Okay? Hebrew doesn't use capitalization, and they don't have periods or commas, remember? So in Hebrew, if I want to indicate a sentence, then I'm going to put vav usually at the beginning of the word, first word of the sentence, and then I'll have another vav beginning a string of words. So this is sentence number 1, and this is sentence number 2. Okay, and then when I get to the end of the verse, I'll have that sof pasuk and the saluk. So seeing a vav at the front, that indicates our sentence boundary. In English, we're usually waiting for the end to get to the boundary of the sentence. Hebrew places the sentence boundary marker at the beginning in the form of the conjunction vav. All right, so we'll see more of that as we go on.